Warning: 50 States, 50 Murders is a podcast based around true crime. Please be advised of the horrific details of murder, abuse, and sexual assault, occasional adult language, as well as brief humor. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
Hello, and welcome back to 50 States, 50 Murders. I am your host, AJ.
And I am your co-host, Sarah.
This is the podcast taking you, the listener, on an auditory road trip across all 50 states while we discuss 50 different murders. Thank you all for tuning in to Season 2, Episode 25.
This week, we are heading to Omaha, Nebraska, my old stomping grounds, to tell a tale of lovers and friends and so much more.
Once again, welcome back to 50 States, 50 Murders. This week's recommendation comes as an extension to our conversation from last week as we discussed Alaska, and my co-host Sarah, we discussed a little bit about you finding yourself, as did the mother in the story from last week, so it was kind of like a nice little combo episode.
Absolutely.
If you will. So, you had taken a little trip. And, whether we want to say you were finding yourself or starting over, I mean,
a little bit of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. But, yeah, you went to Nebraska. So you're going to kind of lead our episode here at the start. And we're going to learn a little bit about Nebraska.
Okay, starting up with Nebraska state facts. The state nickname is Cornhusker State. Nebraskans take their sports very seriously, calling themselves the Cornhuskers.
Yeah, big football state. They play Ohio State all the time. They're in the Big Ten. So.
Yes, unfortunately, I have to admit that I was a traitor
okay.
when I went to a Cornhuskers game. I would not dare to wear Ohio State.
No, that's fair. I get that. I understand that. Did you get to go to any actual games or any experiences with the football teams?
We didn't get to go to an actual game, but we did a few times do tailgating.
Okay.
And one of them was actually at the game versus Ohio State, which was really cool.
Yeah.
They really go out to like a huge field, like almost like an Indian reservation, like cornfield type area, and there's just a ton of kids. It's just exactly like, tailgating at OU or Ohio State or
sure.
wherever. It's a really good time. So that was really fun and interesting and kind of cool to, see them play, be there, I guess I should say.
Yeah, just the atmosphere, the environment. They have one of the toughest places to play, so I would imagine that'd be pretty awesome to check out.
Yeah, for sure. And usually we like to cover some unusual laws. I always think those are interesting that you go over. So Nebraska is no stranger to this category at all.
Okay.
It was actually illegal for married couples with gonorrhea to marry.
Okay. So they weren't allowed to get married if they had it, basically.
Correct.
Okay.
And it says married couples, so I couldn't really find any more information if that was just if they both had it, if one person had it.
I mean,
or
are we getting tested before we get married? What's the...
Well, hopefully.
How do we decide this? Okay, interesting. All right.
Definitely unusual. I thought this one was interesting but kind of cool. Barbers were not allowed to eat onions from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Okay. I mean, that makes sense. You're about to be in my face.
Yeah,
I'm not really trying to smell onions while I'm getting I don't have to worry about that anymore, but I get that.
How often are you at the hair salon?
Yeah, it's been a long time since I dealt with the barber, but yeah, I get that. That one makes a little bit of sense. Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yep. And the last one, it was illegal for a child to burp during church. which could result in the arrest of the child's parent.
Okay. This one I get. Growing up in the church, I know like if I ever did something like that, burp, yawn,
Yeah, I definitely
even like
have some
sneeze or
consequences,
cough,
but
like
I couldn't imagine my parent being arrested for it.
yeah,
That
no,
would
getting
be-
arrested's pretty wild. But I know that I would definitely have to. I would be in trouble when I got home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
For sure. Some other fun facts of Nebraska include Omaha, Nebraska is actually where the Wizard in The Wizard of Oz is from. Kind
Okay.
of this week, actually, just had a nice little reminder of that. We visited a Wizard of Oz at E.J. Thomas Hall, where they were on ice.
Okay.
Wizard of Oz on ice. It's a lot to say, but
Look like a blast.
yeah, and they had the big screen of the wizard, who was like a big, scary green monster
Mhm.
type, and then his computer and like his crazy sound started like dying,
Okay.
and then they realized he was just a normal guy,
Mm.
a normal little guy from Omaha, Nebraska. So
Oh, okay.
I thought that was really cool and
I've
interesting.
actually never watched that movie before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we talked about Wizard of Oz in our first season when we did Kansas. For some reason, the movie always creeped me out. I just never never watched it. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that. Emmy was not a fan of the wizard at all. So
Yeah.
And another, Nebraska is the birthplace of the Reuben sandwich.
Okay.
Do you like Reubens?
I get down with Reubens. Were you a big fan of Reubens when you were in Nebraska?
No.
No?
I will say no, that I'm not a fan of Reubens at all. Nothing that goes in there is appealing to me.
Okay,
so.
but I wonder if Reubens in Nebraska taste
Are
better.
different?
Just
Yeah.
because, like, this is where it's from. This is where it came from. Okay.
I will definitely have to reach out to a couple friends, phone a friend and ask.
Okay. So you didn't try them at all?
I did not.
Wow.
Nope.
Missed opportunity. Okay. I'm scrolling here. You know, I'm a big fan of the state flags. And for the most part, state flags are pretty clean, simple. I really like this Nebraska state flag. I like what we got going on here. It's pretty cool. We got a blue block, a seal. It's gold. And I don't know what my guy's doing on here. It looks like he's working, doing some blue collar work. But yeah, I'm liking the aesthetics of the Nebraska flag. Throw that on the TikTok.
It's definitely not.
All right. Cool.
We'll throw that on the TikTok page for you guys. Definitely not the worst state flag I've seen, but it's definitely one of the better looking ones, I think.
Yeah. All right, we got murder per capita. It is a murder podcast after all, and Nebraska is going to be coming in at 32nd out of all 50 states for murder per capita. 3.2 murders per 100,000 people. I mean, you get those flyover states that are just nothing but cornfields. So, I mean, I don't know if I was necessarily expecting a lot of murder out there. I feel like 32 makes sense. Top places to see. We're going to switch things up a little bit. I'm going to let you run this segment since you've actually been there. You spent some time there. How long were you out there for?
A little over 7.5 months, about.
Okay.
So yeah, but it was
Cool.
right before I turned 21, and I'm about to turn 35 this year. So it is.
It's been a while.
It's been a little while. So I
Okay.
had to refresh my memory a little bit by going through some old photos, which was definitely a trip down memory lane. It was really awesome to see. I mean, it's just so crazy. You move, you pack up. I packed up my entire bedroom, and I guess I should say life at the time, when you're only 20 years old. Packed it up in the back of a 97 Ford Contour and drove 13 hours, and I didn't know anybody at the time. So it's just really cool to see all the friends that I made along the way, and coworkers, and just a lot of people that I still follow to this day on social media. So
Okay, that's cool. Yeah.
So some of the top places to see in the state of Nebraska, I wanted to pick one that I've visited quite frequently and one that I did not get a chance to visit.
Sure.
So first up, we have the place that I visited quite frequently, which is the city of Lincoln.
Okay.
It's another major city like Omaha, has great nightlife, historical buildings, and a lot of busy restaurants and bars. So a lot of time, we would head out over there for a little while too. So it was definitely a cool place to check out, and definitely recommend if you are in the area.
Yeah, Lincoln seems cool. I think that's where Nebraska's university is, right? Lincoln, Nebraska? I think that's where campus is at. Okay.
And Chimney Rock. It's a famous landmark that helped guide pioneers on their westward journey, and it symbolized Nebraska's role in that migration. Chimney Rock is located in western Nebraska and is one of the top things to do and see in Nebraska.
Okay, that just feels like a real just Nebraska thing. That's that makes a lot of sense. Just a rock, and I would imagine it's in some sort of a park, and that's cool. I'm all about hiking and checking stuff like that out, so very cool.
I know we always like to throw in some information about local casinos, or one of the top gambling spots.
Yeah,
but
it's a gambling podcast at this point.
Well, it's one of the things that is something I would like, fun places I like to see. But fun fact: the casinos in Nebraska did actually not become legal until November of 2020.
Okay.
So just about 4.5 years ago. So
I
was
still new to it.
Yeah, I was long gone by then.
Okay.
I do have a memory of us going to a casino. So when I first went to Nebraska, it was I can't remember exactly the month, but it was a few months. So I want to say it was the beginning of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And in June, I had turned 21 and went to Vegas, and then came home, and I was 21, and I wanted to go out with some of my coworkers.
Sure.
And they wanted to go gambling. And I was like, oh, cool, a casino, because I just got back from Vegas, which, has all the cool, huge, large casinos. And we went to a boat.
Okay, like a little river boat.
Like a really big river boat,
Okay.
that had a bunch of slot machines and some tables. So you could not gamble at all on land there, but if you were in the water, it was like a different story.
Yeah, okay.
And I know that there also was, which I don't think we visited any, but I know that they also have some gaming on like Indian reservations that is like excluded from the state laws. So
okay,
that's very interesting. I'm curious to see how if those are still around now that, gambling is legal, if they've,
I mean,
if there's still little mom and pop shop type casinos, or if they've like, got bought out, or migrated to the Harrah's and other casinos of the world.
That's very true. It's hard to say, but I would probably assume that they're still probably there. People love their slots and their tables, so it's probably there. The riverboat would be a pretty cool experience. I'd like to do that one of these times. I think the closest one to us is Indiana.
Well, that is a state that we haven't visited yet that I would really love to visit. So hopefully maybe on an upcoming podcast we can head out there and do a little sightseeing ourselves. Yeah,
definitely. For sure.
But for the most part, Nebraska was a lot like Ohio. Typical nightlife, your downtown areas, your downtown little fun things to do, little shops, little bars, cool restaurants and everything. So not too different than being here, but
yeah, it's got that Midwestern farmland kind of vibe. So yeah, okay, it sounds.
And another thing to note too, Omaha is actually really close to Iowa.
Okay.
So when I told you I worked at Longhorn Steakhouse, the two restaurants I opened were actually in Council Bluffs, Iowa.
Okay.
But we lived in Omaha, Nebraska.
Cool.
So we crossed the border every day, the state line, I guess I should say, not border. We crossed the state line every day, which was kind of cool, only being 15 minutes in between two states. I thought that was really interesting, too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Sounds like a neat little experience. You get to cross off two states on your list, basically. So that's nice. That's a little bit about Nebraska and your time there, some things to do, some places to see, some fun facts. And I know you were able to locate a infamous Nebraska murderer. We didn't really locate too many of these, but we did find a good one, and I'm going to throw it back to you. Tell us a little bit about the Nebraska serial killer.
Yep, the infamous other crime I found occurred in Nebraska history in 1958. Charlie Starkweather and Carol Fugate went on a killing spree for 2 months across Nebraska and Wyoming, murdering 11 people, including a few of their own family. At the time of the murders, Carol was only 14 years old.
Oh, okay. Nice. Getting started young.
Yeah.
Okay.
Carol Ann was just 14 when she and her 18-year-old boyfriend, Charles Starkweather, went on a 2-month killing spree through Nebraska and Wyoming. In all, they murdered 11 people, including Carol's mother, stepfather, and baby half-sister. Carol Ann claimed that Starkweather had held her hostage, but a jury nevertheless convicted her and sentenced her to life in prison. Starkweather was executed in the electric chair. After serving 17 years, Carol was paroled and to this day maintains her innocence. The story of the two was the basis for the movies Badlands and Natural Born Killers.
Not familiar with either of those movies, but that's a super interesting story, so I'd be willing to check those out. I just have to say, Starkweather, that just sounds like a Nebraska name. It's very Nebraska. I've never been there, obviously, but Charlie Starkweather is the kind of name I would imagine for a Nebraska serial killer.
I agree.
That makes a lot of sense. All right, so as always, after we discuss some infamous serial killers in the state we're traveling to, we like to talk about our own murder case of the week. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to switch gears. I found a case that I thought was very interesting. And as I was getting halfway through my research, I realized something. This story was pretty familiar to me. And that's because it's a documentary on Netflix. I don't want to really say what it is just yet. I don't want to spoil too much, but I will come back around the horn at the end, and I'll give you the documentary on Netflix if you want to check that out. And maybe you're listening to this and you've realized you've already watched it and you know the story. If you don't know the story, it's a good one. So here we go.
This week, we'll be diving into the life of David Krupa. Dave's quest of starting fresh, as well as the love triangle he dug himself into. Prior to this fresh start, Dave was in a pretty serious and solid relationship with his girlfriend at the time, Amy. Not only was Amy his girlfriend, she was also the mother of his 2 children. Unfortunately, time passed and things just simply weren't working out between the two. While it was a clean split, it was decided that a break between the two would be for the best.
Okay, so we have a serious relationship, couple kids, and it seems like they were able to have a clean split. You go this way, I go that way. No hard feelings. I can respect that. And kind of like you mentioned last week, you know, you were kind of going through a breakup and it seemed like perfect time to head on out. And I kind of think that's where Dave's headspace was. So, just like our co-host Sarah, he decided to head to Omaha, Nebraska for a work opportunity as well as a fresh start in life. Dave was able to find a job where he would be working as a manager at an auto shop. Dave was an auto mechanic, so managing the shop was just a natural fit. Dave arrived into his new city and decided what better way to find friends and meet people than to create an account on a dating site. Dating site of choice just happened to be Plenty of Fish. Do you have any personal experience with dating sites? I got into a pretty serious relationship that turned into marriage right after high school, so I don't. But, I mean, for you, any experiences, or what was that like?
Yeah, I can't say that I ever tried Plenty of Fish, even though I know that was something probably right out of high school.
Okay, so no Plenty of Fish.
No Plenty of Fish. I did try a couple other dating sites. That is where I met the father of my child.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
On Bumble.
Okay.
I will say, though, that just being a crime junkie and always listening to these type of podcasts, I've always been very hesitant to give people too much information. So I think people kind of think I'm a little standoffish. So as far as meeting anybody off of a dating site, Gary was the second person I ever met off of a dating site.
Okay.
And it was because he had a lot of pictures on his account.
Yeah.
And it led me to, and like I was friends, or I had known the people he was friends with.
Sure.
So I knew, and we graduated from the same high school, so it kind of, I knew he was real.
Yeah.
I know you can never tell if somebody is necessarily a serial killer, but I felt comfortable meeting him in a public place, so that we did, and
okay.
The rest is history, and that's how we became best friends. So I guess thanks. Shout out to Bumble.
Yeah, shout out to Bumble. Okay. Yeah, so that's kind of where Dave was at. He said, I don't know anybody, kind of like you said. What better way than to jump on an account and try to meet some people. Now, when you were traveling to Nebraska, did you were you in the dating field at the time, or were you trying to just keep it low key as possible?
I was keeping it low key as possible. Working in a restaurant, you meet a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of friends who have other friends, and we definitely hung out in a bunch of different circles. So none were really a love match or anything like that. And I definitely was not compelled to get on any dating sites out there just because of not knowing anybody, and I would have no mutuals with anybody, so it'd been too scary for me. I just went and met people through friends and all the coworkers that I had.
Okay, I understand that. So for Dave, he really wasn't looking for necessarily romantic commitments, anything like that. I think from what I can get out of this story, it was more so just an avenue to meet some ladies out there and just to have a good time.
At the beginning of this journey, there was a bit of disappointment for Dave. He would jump on his dating account every day in hopes of a request, a message, a match, anything. As things were getting slightly frustrating, he jumped on and had his first hit.
All right, nice. First hit, okay.
As his eyes lit up, a message of plenty of fish from Omaha native Liz Gollier.
Okay, so Dave's got a hit. He's going to be meeting up with Liz. Very cool. You love to see that. As these two met, they seemed to hit it off all right. Liz was a single parent, just like Dave. And I'll throw this back to you. Dave mentioned in the documentary and such, as a single parent, that was something that was important to him. So for you as a single parent, do you feel like when you decide to go back out, are you looking for a single parent? Do you feel like that's important? Or not necessarily?
I think it's important for somebody to truly understand that you're a single parent. And I think it's hard to do without being a single parent yourself or having that experience, because it's a full-time commitment. And
yeah,
I think people in this day and age, people are so used to having access to other people, even people that they don't even know yet, that, they think that you should be texting them back all the time.
Yep.
And the short experiences I've had with even talking to people, it just seems that they want a lot more attention than really you can give as a single parent. So I think only other single parents can understand that. But then again, there's always, those one-off people. So you never know.
Okay, so maybe not necessarily a need-to-be basis, but it's important. It helps check some boxes off. Okay, so that's kind of where Dave was at in his head when he was looking for some people on Plenty of Fish. And like I said, Liz was a single parent just like Dave. As the two began talking and going out, Dave expressed that he was not looking for anything serious. He was just out to have a good time, was not interested in committing to a long-term relationship, and thankfully for Dave, Liz was on the same exact page. Lovers, friends, nothing less, nothing more. Time passed, and Dave continued meeting more people over the 6 months when he had been in Omaha, Nebraska. Dave and Liz continued talking and hanging out on occasion, but they stayed true to the non-committal. Then, one day at work, he had a customer come in who he couldn't help but have catch his eye. He thought long and hard about asking her out on a date while he was helping her with her car, but ultimately decided it'd probably be unprofessional, and he decided not to pursue. That is until he was scrolling through Plenty of Fish, and boom, the customer he was drooling over just happened to pop up on Plenty of Fish. So he took a shot, messaged her, saying, "Hey, I know you." And in the documentary, he states that this girl was well outside of his league, but figured no harm in trying. This person's name was Carrie Farver. She received his message, and they began going back and forth shortly after, which led to the two of them meeting up and talking. This time, it was Carrie who mentioned, "Hey, not looking for anything serious, just looking for a good time." And Dave claimed that he felt like he had a home run. He didn't have to do the dance around being not serious, just looking for a good time. She was upfront about it herself, outside of his league, and things were looking great for Dave.
Carrie Farver was a 37-year-old who was a computer programmer. She happened to conveniently work nearby Dave's apartment. On their very first date, they went out for dinner and drinks, and they decided to go back to Dave's apartment.
Okay, Dave, going back to the apartment. Love to see that. All right.
And things were going great, minus one teeny tiny setback that was about to take place.
Okay.
We could call this an awkward interaction. I'd like to call this a little bit of a red flag if I was Carrie.
Okay, fair enough.
As Dave and Carrie were upstairs hanging out, he received a call from his old fling, Liz.
Okay, Liz is calling up. All right.
Liz was calling because she mistakenly left a sweater at his apartment and wanted to come up to grab it.
Yikes.
So you can understand how this would be a weird spot for all three people involved.
Yeah.
Your first date with a girl, and you have to explain that another fling is there for her sweater. And then the girl's asking to come up. You have to explain to the other girl.
Hey, I got someone up here right now.
Yes.
Okay.
You have to explain you have another girl over at the time.
2 friends with benefits.
Yep.
3 adults.
Three people in the same room. 3's a crowd at this point.
I have to assume everyone treated this very maturely.
Well, thankfully for Dave, all parties did fully understand
Okay.
that all relationships were just for fun and nothing serious.
Perfect.
So there's no way possible that any awkward run-ins could turn into anything terrible, right? Lovers and friends, nothing less, nothing more. The chances of this turning into a messy love triangle, slim to none at this point.
Feels like foreshadow. But, nonetheless, things are going great for Dave still. He's got 2 different flings. He's somehow sneaking past the fact that they're running into each other, and everything's great. So far, so good. In conclusion of the first run-in between Dave, Liz, and Carrie, like we said, nothing crazy. Dave walked Carrie out as he walked Liz up to get her sweater. Now, naturally figuring this was their first date, Dave's probably thinking his shot with Carrie's, naturally, he probably blew it. But figured what the heck. Liz didn't stay long and decided to give Carrie a call. Hey, I know you just left. Why don't you just come back? The coast is clear. Well, Carrie said she was almost home, but said, hey, why don't you come over to my place? Dave's on a roll. Okay, so now he's going over to Carrie's house. From that first date on, Dave and Carrie were locked in. They were solid. We're going to fast forward just a bit in our timeline. Again, things still going great. They continued hitting it off, having a great time. Even with that little awkward run-in we mentioned, all's well. They continue to hang out more and more, going on dates, even staying in each other's places overnight. While friends with benefits usually always turn sour, that was not the case for Dave and Carrie. They were able to spend more time while maintaining that this was nothing serious. That is until November 12th, 2012.
On this day, nothing seemed off at first to Dave. Carrie spent the night at his apartment. They wake up, kiss each other goodbye, and go their separate ways for work. Just another ordinary day. However, come lunchtime on this day, November 12th, Dave experiences firsthand cool Carrie transform into crazy Carrie.
Oh, no. Okay. Hate to hear that for our guy Dave. He's got a great setup, a fun girl, and sounds like she's going to turn crazy. I wonder how that could happen. I can't imagine a friends with benefits love triangle turning crazy, but that's exactly what happened. Dave was caught extremely off guard when he saw a text come in from Carrie saying that she thought, hey, we should take our relationship to the next level and move in together.
Wow.
I mean, to be fair, not necessarily crazy given the dates they're going on, having a great time. She's already staying at his place. I mean, what the heck. But
when you say you don't want anything serious, that's a pretty big jump. I could see how it'd be a little scary for Dave.
Yeah, definitely. My guy was just taken aback, and given the nature of their relationship, Dave replied back to her, I thought we talked about this. And with that one very simple, polite decline, not only did Carrie change, as you mentioned, so did Dave's life.
Dave noticed the shift in Carrie's character immediately. To say she didn't take kindly to his decline in advancing their relationship would be a huge understatement. Without hesitation, he began receiving a bunch of texts cursing him, filled with a whole lot of 4-letter words. Per ABC News, one of Carrie's texts to Dave read, "Fine, I hate you. I'm dating someone else. I don't want to see you anymore. Go away."
So Dave figured initially, again, keeping that same attitude, no harm, no foul. He was bummed out and how the situation unfolded, sure, but given that they weren't dating long enough for any true feelings to really develop, and the fact it was agreed that they were keeping it 100% casual, he thought that, honestly, maybe he dodged a bullet with Carrie. If Carrie was acting this crazy after declining the motion to moving together, how much crazier could she really get? Now, someone who has been attracted to the ladies since the day I can remember, and you being a lady yourself,
Much crazier.
it can get much crazier. Absolutely. He got home from work that same day, and Carrie's stuff was gone. He did not attempt to reach out or see her again. He may not see her, but he would certainly be hearing from her a lot.
A lot, as in for the next 3 years, Dave received close to 15,000 emails and 50,000 text messages. So I take it that the block button was not a thing in 2012.
It must not be. 15,000 emails, 50,000 texts.
That was not part of the Apple update at the time.
Not 5,000, 50,000.
No, but imagine being in what you believed to be friends with benefits, essentially.
Yeah.
With no strings attached.
Yeah.
For a few weeks, having a blast, and the next thing you know, you're being stalked by that same person for the next 3 years.
3 years is crazy because they were really necessarily, like, they were only really talking for a couple weeks. So to go from friends with benefits for just a few weeks to 3 years of 50,000 texts, like, yeah, when I was watching this and reading into it, I just thought, man, our girl Carrie is crazy for real. And this is abusive text, threatening text, alarming text, texts about how she hated him, texts about how she wanted to kill him. He wouldn't see her, but he knew for a fact that she saw him. So for one example, I thought this one was kind of creepy. There is a day where he was at a coffee shop, Starbucks, whatever, and just chilling by himself, drinking a coffee, and he gets a text. He looks down, and it's from our girl Carrie, and it just said, "How's your coffee? I see you." So, I mean, obviously you can imagine, like, yeah, this is getting to a point where it's creepy. And kind of as you mentioned, you know, he did mention, like, he would block her number, but she would just get a new one. He'd block her email address. She'd email from a different address. He'd get a new phone number. Somehow she would figure out the new number and continue texting and stalking.
So Dave tried going to the police, but honestly, there wasn't necessarily a whole lot they could do. She wasn't actually causing physical harm. At this point, you could probably call it cyber stalking. Not okay to do, obviously, but understandably, there's not a whole lot the police could do at this point.
Yeah, and I feel like back then, not back then as like this was forever ago, but I you know, cell phones are still kind of newish. I mean, I'm sure the police are thinking, like, I mean, what do you really want us to do? So, I mean, okay, so far I can understand that.
To add to it, Carrie had texted her mom that she was moving to Kansas to pretty much get a fresh start of her own. Okay. So without physical contact and her being in a different state now, the best they could do was to advise him to ignore or continue blocking Carrie.
Sure. I mean, I'm sure the texts at this point are annoying, but it seems like there's not a whole lot of validity to these if she's in a completely different state. Unfortunately, this turn of events didn't only affect Dave. The craziness of Carrie spread to those around him. You remember Liz, who he met on Plenty of Fish first, the one who ran into Carrie as she was going up to get her sweater the night of Dave and Carrie's first date. Well, Liz was getting harassing texts from Carrie as well. Dave continued to hang out with Liz on occasion, and there would be times where they would both be getting texts at the same time from Carrie about how she was watching the two of them or how they were hanging out and she knew it. And you started off talking about Amy. This was Dave's first girlfriend, the mother of his children. This is the relationship that led him to getting a fresh start, moving to Nebraska. Well, now Amy is also getting threatening texts from Carrie. So everyone's on guard, but still to this point, no one's really seen Carrie in quite some time. She's making plenty of threats, but never once acted on them until the day she finally did.
Liz continued receiving the harassing texts nonstop from Carrie, and then, one day, her house was broken into. In the garage, she spray painted "Whore for Dave." and then proceeded to start a fire, which led to the entire house catching on fire, Carrie becoming a suspect in a case of arson. Thankfully for Liz, she nor her kids were in the house. However, she did have 2 dogs in the house, which tragically were killed in the fire. This was now the first time a physical act of violence had occurred, bringing much more attention to Carrie from detectives. This is a murder podcast, after all, so spoiler alert, listening to this, you already know that a murder at some point is coming. Is it going to be Dave, Liz, Amy, the kids? Liz's dogs were the first victim of this case, but they certainly wouldn't be the last.
Okay, so this is like the first sign that Carrie's acting on these threats that she's been making. They've been open threats up until then. Now she's acting on them, and, you know, I'm sure you can hear my dogs in the background on every episode. Big fan of dogs. Really was a big bummer to hear that 2 dogs were lost in this firefight. Hate that. But nonetheless, the issue that the detectives were having, we're going to backtrack the story all the way back to the initial date. That date is November 12th, 2012. Sarah, as you mentioned, Carrie stayed overnight at Dave's. They kissed goodbye, and they went their separate ways to go to work. Carrie texted him around noon about moving in, and when he declined the offer, she flipped out into a downward spiral, moving her stuff out of his place, and to never be seen by Dave again. Okay, so besides all that, what else is significant about that date? Well, not only was November 12th the last time that Dave saw Carrie, it was the last time that anyone saw Carrie.
Carrie's mother also had reached out to police regarding Carrie a little after this time. She filed a missing person report on Carrie. Carrie was a no-call, no-show for a family member's wedding. She found it extremely bizarre to not see her daughter. However, she was still texting her frequently. She would reach out to say, "Hi, how are you doing?" She would text her on Mother's Day. She would also text her after her and Dave's fallout, telling her she needed to get away and was moving to Kansas for a fresh start. The police at the time didn't seem to be too concerned given this information regarding the communication, and the move certainly makes sense why no one else would have seen her. Also, Carrie's mother did inform police she was also bipolar, which only more so excused the absence.
Yeah, I mean, I can kind of see where the police are coming from. I mean, you're not seeing this person, which is very odd, but, I mean, you're still getting consistent text messages. So it's like, how are you necessarily, quote-unquote, missing when you're still in communication? And she mentioned she's moved out of state, thus that's why you're not seeing her.
Yeah, so I will say one thing about my mom, which we know we have discussed it. She's a 911 dispatcher, but if she does not hear from me, and I'm not joking, probably 24 hours, and this was especially the case when I moved to, across state lines to Nebraska.
Sure.
If she didn't hear from me in 24 hours, she was going to call my work, or she was going to text my roommate, or she was going to find a way to get a hold of me.
Yeah, a
so
little wellness check. Okay.
Yeah, she had to make sure that I was okay, but
I could get why Carrie's mom was freaking out. I mean, she missed the wedding, but I mean, again, you're still getting texts, you're still in communication. I don't see anything on here about phone calls necessarily, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I mean, we got some text messages going on, so okay.
So Carrie's mother was not convinced that she wasn't missing. Carrie's mother was under the impression she may not only be missing, but perhaps dead. What would lead her to feel this way? Sure, the no-show at the wedding was pretty odd, but the picking up and moving away to Kansas, that was also strange. Not talking over the phone was also concerning, but she was still in contact via text, and not to mention, she was terrorizing the lives of Dave, Liz, and Amy.
Okay, so just kind of following up on what I was saying, I mean, a little bit, it sounds like this was a little bit outside of Carrie's character, at least to her mom. But again, police are thinking, she's still in contact with all these people. And you mentioned she had her issues with bipolar. Whether that's right or wrong, I feel like it was kind of easy for the cops to just say, yeah, that's probably just dealing with a little something going on internally. Now, I'm going to jump around a little bit more on this timeline to really just help back up Carrie's mom. You're maybe thinking, is her mom as crazy as she is? Is this the apple not falling far from the tree? Last week's case, we talked about mental illness playing a huge role in the case. And could this potentially be another issue, bipolar, mental issues playing into the disappearance? Or you mentioned that she missed the wedding. Very weird, but I mean, then again, she took the breakup with Dave harder than anyone would have expected. And, perhaps maybe the last thing you want to do after getting your heart broke is to go to a wedding. Man, I could get that. It's a stretch, but nonetheless, I think it's fair. But what really makes this odd and really harder to just allow this in your head to be normal, the wedding is not the only thing she missed. For one, she was a mother. We mentioned she's a single mom, and she texted her mom to watch over her son, and that she'd be back eventually. I feel like, okay, so for you to text your mom out of nowhere and just be like, hey, take care of me, I'll be back when I'm back. That'd be pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That'd be
that would not fly.
That would be very alarming. But nonetheless, that's how this played out. He was 14 at the time, and she actually missed his 15th birthday. Again, I feel like if you missed Amy's birthday, it'd probably be very concerning.
Mm-hmm.
She missed the family's Thanksgiving, and the most alarming, she missed her father's funeral. So when you're really taking all this into account, you can really start to understand where Carrie's mother's concerns are coming from, as well as the frustration with the police.
Jumping to January 2013, this would be 2 months since Dave last seen Carrie. He comes across her car in a parking lot, which he reported to police. Again, just another oddity to Carrie. If she had left for Kansas, why was her car abandoned in a parking lot? Also, is it odd that Dave is the one who found the car? Beats me, but that's where this story is thus far.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Why is her car still in Omaha if she left for Kansas? And it is pretty coincidental that our guy Dave just happened to be the one who stumbled along her car, but that's neither here nor there. Now, stay with me. We're going to continue jumping around here. We'll make sense of it all. We're going to jump to 2015. Carrie still has not been seen, but her stalking and texts are continuing. Now, she did burn Liz's house down, but beyond that small little incident, nothing crazy. They found a car of hers in 2013 after she said she moved to Kansas. Police detectives really began digging deeper into Carrie Moore. Really, where was she? Why was she still sending these threatening texts after 3 years had passed? And also, she was the suspect for arson. So one of two things were true. Either she really is missing, and that's an issue they need to solve, or she's not missing, and she needs to be held responsible for the cyber stalking as well as the arson that she committed.
So Carrie's car was abandoned, her house and family left behind. A beyond glaring red flag. A detective noticed she had a checking account and never once was it used after November 12th. That date again. The last time that she saw Dave. Detective Ravis, who was handling her case, stated, "It's not normal for adults just to jump up and leave and literally spend no money. No one's seen her. No one's heard her voice. She had a good income, a good house. He's come to the conclusion at this point that he could not prove she was actually alive."
Okay, so we're not necessarily agreeing that she's dead. We're not on that ship just yet with Carrie's mom, but we're also not saying she's alive either. There's really been no substantial proof beyond these text messages that she is actually present. With Carrie's existence now in question, Liz begins to think that maybe it wasn't Carrie who's been texting her, and maybe it wasn't Carrie who set her house on fire, killing her dogs. Maybe it was Dave's first girlfriend and the mother of his children, Amy. But keep in mind, Amy was also getting threatening texts and emails as well. Then the more detectives started to look elsewhere, texting Dave, crazy stalker ex-girlfriend. Not too crazy, but they noticed a mass amount of texts and emails and threats directed towards Liz. Now, Dave and Liz were never serious. Liz and Carrie only interacted that one time, the night Liz stopped by for the sweater. Never met prior to or after that. So why was there so much hostility directed towards Liz For someone who was a complete stranger, why was she aimed so heavily in all these harassments?
Okay, so we have a love triangle surrounding our guy Dave. With this triangle has come stalking harassment, arson, dead dogs, anxiety, missing person case, and so much more. We've been doing quite a bit of jumping back and forth and tiptoeing around who did it and why. So let's put a bow and ribbon on this case and bring it all together.
All right, it is a murder podcast. So, yeah, let's tie this all together. Let's figure out what the hell happened. So, due to the heavy amount of cyber stalking that took place with all parties involved, the detectives decided it was time to bring in a digital forensics specialist to take a better examination on everything that's going on. Kind of feel like, the stalking's going on for 3 years. Maybe they could have done this a little bit earlier. But, hey, nonetheless, we're here now. We got a forensics specialist in on this case. And if there's one thing I've learned from murder podcasts, movies, shows, doing this myself, researching, me and you have talked about it, me and Dakota have talked about it. Gotta be real careful with your cell phones. Your cell phones will always come back to get you. Whether it's the cell phone towers, the pings, timestamps, location. I mean, those cell phones will get you. So they figured, let's get a digital specialist in here and really try to figure out what's going on. So naturally, Dave and Liz, they turned over their phones just for hopes of getting a better idea of where could Carrie be, and is it her sending these texts for these 3 years, and why is she sending these texts for 3 years? Let's get to the bottom of it. So what was found on Dave's phone all checked out. Nothing out of the ordinary, but our girl Liz, some oddities on Liz's phone, and her phone happened to tell a completely different story. So on Liz's phone, they were actually able to recover a photo of Carrie's car that was spotted in the empty parking lot. The picture on the phone shows it was taken a month before her car was located. So, interesting. Why is a stranger's car on your phone? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Also, there was a photo of a woman tied up in the trunk of a vehicle on her phone. Okay. If that's not Carrie, either way, that's a huge concern. And on that car that they found abandoned, they were able to lift a fingerprint. And of course, it came back to match identically to Liz. Forensic continued uncovering more and more information from Liz's cell phone. Over 30 fake email addresses registered by her. Not necessarily illegal, but in this circumstance with the cyber stalking, you can see how that's a problem. Remember how Liz and Dave would be together and they both got texts while they were with one another. So maybe you're thinking, okay, well, how could it have been Liz? Well, they discovered a scheduling app on her phone that would plan out future texts to be sent at specific times. The detectives were able to get a search warrant into Liz's home, which is where they found even more incriminating evidence, such as Carrie's camera and camcorder. In this wild back and forth for years, Carrie was painted out to be this person that she really never was. An insane, bipolar, crazy ex-girlfriend who was stalking Dave and those around him. The entire time she was having her reputation tarnished, while honestly she was actually murdered and missing the entire time. So Liz bumping into Carrie that night of the first date to get her hoodie. She became so jealous that she had killed Carrie, and to cover her tracks, she made it out to seem like it was Carrie who was doing the stalking the whole time. In reality, Liz was stalking Dave the whole time. She was sending threatening texts to his first ex, Amy, and would send herself threatening emails and texts to help make it look more like Carrie. And if you're wondering, well, wait, what about Liz's garage being broken into, the spray paint, the arson? Okay, so, believe it or not, that was actually Liz. She staged a break-in to her own garage, spray painted the garage herself, and then lit her own house on fire. So, naturally, that means that she killed her own 2 dogs just to make Carrie look like a crazy stalker.
Detectives arrested Liz on December 22nd, 2016. Her charge was first-degree murder. This arrest came 3 years after Dave last saw Carrie for the final time leaving his apartment that day. Liz was convicted the following year and sentenced to life in prison. While Carrie's body was never found, her family found relief in the fact that her tarnished reputation had been repaired and they could put to rest the missing persons case going forward. This was a tragic case of lovers and friends and much, much more gone wrong.
Yeah, so that is, it was crazy because it was like one of the last things you expected, but I thought what was like the most tragic in all of this is the whole time that she's been murdered, you know, she actually was this really cool person that Dave thought she was to begin with. And throughout these 3 years, he's tormented. People are thinking that she's crazy. Again, she's just this bipolar, crazy, stalking ex-girlfriend, when really it was Liz who was crazy and stalking, and it was just...
It really begs a question, too, that I feel like obviously Liz wanted more from her and Dave's relationship as well, and I wonder if she was already stalking him and knew. I mean, it just seems like a crazy coincidence now that she just so happened to reach out to him when Carrie was at
for the sweater,
his apartment. So I feel like she probably was stalking him, you know, prior to that, and then once she had her confirmation, it just put her over the edge.
Yeah.
That's not confirmed, but...
Absolutely. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you found the story interesting, or maybe you think it's too crazy to be legit, you can check out Lover, Stalker, Killer on Netflix. It's a documentary all about the case discussed today. It's got our actual guy Dave in there giving his firsthand experiences. Obviously they dive deeper into it than we just did, but yeah, it takes you for a ride, and I thought it was a pretty cool story. And when I was looking up Nebraska murders, more so I was looking for Omaha to kind of match, since that's where you were staying at. This is the story that came up, and we ran with it. Closing points. Shout out to Dave for trying to be his best at being a good guy, and, you know, just like, hey, being up front. I think as long as you're up front with it, you can't knock him too much. I'm not looking for anything serious.
No,
I just
but
want to have fun. But
yeah, but as he says, he's kissing somebody goodbye every day. They're staying the night with each other. It's all about your actions too, and I think you should. My take is you should date with intention.
Yeah,
and you should, just because you say you don't want anything serious, but then all of your actions are portraying something serious, women will get confused. And you better hope you didn't meet a serial killer on Plenty of Fish.
Yeah, and I would say the friends with experience, friends with benefits, probably not necessarily like really possible. So, I mean, our guy Dave tried to pull it off, but
kudos for trying.
Kudos for trying, but man, it really turned into a crazy 3 years in his life. That's our story for the week. And when you were in Omaha, so this case was 2016. When were you in Omaha?
2010 to 2011.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Well, this was not 2016. This was 2012. So
yeah,
it was close.
So, right, yeah.
I was just curious to see if there was any crossover between you being there and this case.
Very close.
Very close, but not quite. Okay. All right. So we discussed the state of Nebraska. Sarah discussed her move to Nebraska and a fresh start, and some things to do, some places to see. And usually I let my co-host rank the states, but I mean, you've already been there. Mm-hmm. I haven't. So I guess naturally it makes sense for me to throw it on there. Now, I will say again, I love football, and Ohio State plays Nebraska quite a lot. It's an awesome city, awesome experience from what I can see on TV. Beyond that, it kind of seems like just a bunch of cornfields. So I would definitely love to go there for a game. I don't know if that's enough to really put old Nebraska way up there. I'm going to put it at let's go 35. 35, okay. We'll go ahead and lock Nebraska in for our blind rankings from 1 to 50 as far as desirable states that we would like to see after discussing them on our podcast. So, with all that being said, as we begin our departure from the state of Nebraska, the Cornhusker State, in conclusion of episode 25 of 50 States, 50 Murders, we want to just continue to thank you, the listener, for tuning in as we are halfway through 50 states. Be sure to continue along as we move into the second half of the good old USA.
If you have not already, please be sure to follow and subscribe. We're on Spotify, TikTok, and now YouTube. Be sure to tune in next week for episode 26. Thanks, guys.